Hello, poker friends. This is Navonod on Navonod Hold'em with my long-awaited second quiz, Navonod's new No Limit Hold'em quiz, or Navon No Limit Hold'em quiz version 2.0, back by popular demand. We're going to start off with a freebie. So we're going to give you a bonus question right off the bat. This is worth 1 point if you get it correct. Looking at the avatar that I use for my YouTube channel, the little guy there, who is it, what is he doing, and where is that picture taken from? Okay, so for 1 point, it is this guy from this scene, the iconic scene where Data is playing poker with Hawking, Sir Isaac Newton, and me, Albert Einstein, as a poker player. So yeah, just start yourself off with a pat on the back and a free point right there if you got that one right. And if not, meh. Moving right along. So I do think this quiz is going to be a lot better than the original version that I did way back when, just the first one I did. I think the questions are better. I put a lot more thought into it. And I think the scoring system is interesting, and I'm not going to get too much into the scoring system until I release the answers to the video, or the answer video to the quiz video. But each question is going to be worth a point value that is equal to the number of ways you could have answered it incorrectly. So on a multiple choice question, if there's 3 choices, A, B, and C, it's going to be worth 2 points because you could have got it wrong 2 different ways. A true and false question will be worth 1 point. If there's 4 multiple choices, then that'll be worth 3 points. Savvy? Moving right along. Nav Quiz 2.0. Question 1. Which of the following is likely the best approach to low stakes opening ranges from the button with 75 to 100 big blinds effective? I originally intended section 1 to be all heads up questions. It didn't turn out that way. I think this is probably pretty okay for heads up or for 6 max, but I guess just to give this a little context, let's just say, let's errata this a little bit to say which of the following is likely the best approach to low stakes open ranges from the button in a heads up game, whether that's a cash game or a sit and go, I guess is probably pretty immaterial. A, open limp about half of your buttons and raise the other half to 2.5 times the big blind. B, min raise your best and worst hands, but use a 3.5x open with a bound and capped kind of a merged range with mediocre strength hands at the middle 33% ballpark. Or C, choose a sizing between 2 and 3 times the big blind to open raise most of your hands with, and then just fold the rest at most stack depths. And definitely for the 75 to 100 big blind effective stack size, one of these is going to be most players' default answer. So, I'm not necessarily saying that one of these is a perfect answer. What I'm asking is, if you had to choose one of these, which would you choose for stack sizes between 75 and 100 big blinds, playing a heads up no limit hold'em game from the button? Question number 2. Which of the following does not incentivize you to use a post-flop bet size that is small relative to the size of the pot? So, which is not a good reason to use a small bet sizing? A, you have very deep stacks with a high stack to pot ratio. B, you're playing in a 3-bet pot with a smaller stack to pot ratio. C, you're playing on a dry and static flop. D, mild range advantage, so you've got a mild range advantage with a lot of hands in your range that will want to bet. Moving right along, we're going to keep this going. There's a lot of questions. Number 3 and number 4 are both going to rely on this run out. So we've got a run out of 10, 8, 7, that's the flop, then a 3, then a 2. So it's 10 of spades, 8 of clubs, 7 of spades, 3 of clubs, 2 of diamonds. Now in question 3, relating to this run out, villain raises on the flop, Now, note that I didn't say check raises or not, and I didn't mention which position he's in. It's probably not going to matter, and I wanted to keep it a little bit ambiguous so I could reference back to it. So a villain raises the flop, then bets the turn, and bets the river. Which of these hands is the better bluff catcher for hero to call the river with? So villain is either check raising out of position, or he's raising against a lead in position, and then he is betting again on the turn and betting again on the river. Which of these is a better bluff catcher? So if hero has A, the ace of spades with the 10 of clubs for top pair, top kicker, or if hero has B, 10 of diamonds, 9 of diamonds, which one of these hands is going to be a better bluff catcher? Number 4. In the above run out, with the above action, which is the better hand to bluff raise the river with? So let's say we have some money behind even after it goes either, let's just say check raise, bomb turn, bomb river. There's still money behind left to rip it in over the top. Which of these two hands is going to be a better candidate to make a bluff raise with on this run out on the river? Ace of spades, 9 of spades, or B, jack of hearts, 6 of hearts. Moving on to question number 5. Our opponent is shaping up to be a very loose and very aggressive player. He's got a high 3-bet percent, uses larger than standard bets pre-flop and post-flop. He barrels a lot, and he loves to make check raises. He seems like a maniacal type opponent who's prone to over-bluffing, but he does use his image to make thinner than normal value bets. Which of the following would be a good strategic adjustment against this type of opponent? A, increase your own aggression so you can fight fire with fire. B, tighten your button opens and tighten your big blind defense. A, get out there and do battle by trying to out-aggress the aggressive player. Or B, tighten your button open range and your big blind defense range. Or C, raise less often and call more often than you normally would, if not for this all being the case for the villain. Alright, on to number 6. So we've got another run out with some new action. Okay, so the button opens and the big blind calls, the flop comes out. Ace of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 5 of spades. Then we've got the 8 of spades on the turn and the king of diamonds as the river. The action was check, bet, call, and then the turn checked through. So there's a pre-flop button open raise, the big blind calls, and if there's a small blind in there, I guess he folded, or if we're playing heads up, then the small blind, of course, would be the button. But not really very relevant. What we need to know is there was a button open and a big blind call, and the flop came ace, 10, 5, rainbow, and the action went. The big blind checks to the raiser. The pre-flop raiser continuation bets the flop, and the big blind calls. On the turn, we have the 8 of spades, and the big blind checks, and the button checks back, which brings us to a river of king of diamonds, whose range at this point contains more air. A, the button, or B, the big blind. So who has more nothing hands, more hands that do not contain even a pair? Who has the most air? The way that the hand played out and the run out, based on pre-flop ranges, based on post-flop ranges, and just kind of the action. Who do we think is going to have the most air in their range at the point where we get to the river? Button or big blind? Question number 7. Which of the following is true? The big blind should, in this scenario, A, bet his entire range on the river. B, value bet very thinly but rarely bluff any of his air or weak made hands. Or C, only value bet very strong hands and look for hands to bluff with that will include some weak pairs. And number 8, if a decent but not great low stakes player, so like a good rag, not like a pro, but like just a good rag at the low stakes, not micro stakes, but at the low stakes, is playing this action and he's the big blind. If it goes check, back, call, check, check, and the big blind jams all in on the river, what should the button probably do with pocket queens? A, fold, or B, call. Number 9. An example of a good time to donk lead the flop as pre-flop caller out of position would be A, when you have a hand that you won't be comfortable check calling with, but you don't really want to check and fold either. B, you have a major range advantage and expect the villain to realize that and check back a lot of flops. Or C, don't call me a donk. Enough said on that, I think. Number 10. This is going quicker than I expected it to. In a pure polar versus bluff catcher situation, there is $50 in the pot when we get to the turn. You would like to bet a balanced and polarized range on the turn, and you would also like to bet a lot of rivers. You have $200 in your stack. We'll say that $200 is the effective stack to start the turn. And you're heads up, you're out of position, and you're obviously the player that's repping the polarized range in this polar versus bluff catcher scenario. What is the optimal bet size that you can use on the turn to maximize your EV across the turn and river with a polarized and well-balanced range against a range that is all bluff catchers? And there is an answer to this. This is not really an opinion. We're asking what the game theory optimal bet sizing would be for the turn, and there is an answer that I'll explain once we do the answer section or the answers video. Is the correct answer A, $25? Is it B, $50? Or is it C, $100? And number 11, of the following hands, which is the most likely hand to best fit into a 3-bet range, regardless of the stack depth, regardless of positions, and regardless of the number of players at the table? Pocket nines, queen jack suited, ace king offsuit, or king queen suited. So which hand are we most likely to want to 3-bet regardless of the situation? I mean, if we just have to pick one hand, well, here's the way you could look at it. You're about to be teleported into a spot where you have one of the following hands, and you know that you're going to be facing a range, but that's all you're facing an open raise. That's all you know. No, I don't think that's a good way to look at it. I think we can just get away with asking the question as is. Of the following hands, which of the hands is most likely to fit best into a 3-bet range regardless of stack depth, position, and number of players at the table? So I guess like for all the times you get dealt pocket nines, queen jack suited, ace king offsuit, king queen suited, sometimes you're going to fold some of these hands, sometimes you're going to just flat call with some of them, and sometimes you're going to 3-bet some of them. Which one is going to be least likely to be folded or flat called, and most likely to be 3-bet versus an open raise, just in general, overall? And I think that that is an answerable question. And if you've watched all of my videos, you do too. Okay, number 12. Assuming that you're heads up to the flop, and the flop is jack 8-2, spade club spade, and want to split the following hands into a range with 1 check call and 2 check raises, which hand will best fit into the check call range? So really just a way to ask this would be, if you're going to have to choose 2 of these hands to check raise on the flop and one of them to check call with on the flop, which hand is going to be the best check call? And then which 2 hands are going to be, well, I guess the other 2 hands will obviously be check raises, But really what I'm asking is which one of these hands makes the best check call on that flop. Number 13, you want to have a perfectly balanced and polarized range that jams the river for one full pot-sized bet. For your bet sizing to be optimal, what should your ratio of value hands to bluffs be to make villains bluff catchers indifferent between calling and folding? A, 1-to-1, B, 2 value bets for every one bluff, or C, 2 bluffs for every one value hand. Again, we're trying to make our opponent indifferent between folding and calling. We know that we're doing a pot-sized bet, so if we're making a pot-sized bet, what is our ratio of value to bluff? What ought it be? And the next question, you are trying to determine the fishiness of a player in your ring game. Which of the following should not be taken as strong evidence to suggest that a player is bad or fishy? A, he's playing a 55 big blind stack when he doesn't have to be playing that. B, he has open limped and called ISO raises out of position. So multiple times he's opened for a limp and called an ISO raise. C, and the multiple times when he's done that, he's been out of position against the isolator. C, his VPIP is the same from all positions, and this is over a reasonable sample size, one that we can put some stock in. Or D, he uses the same open sizing from all positions. 15, in a full ring game with 100 plus big blind stacks, which of the following hands would play best as an overlimp and worst as an ISO raise? And we're assuming here that the cutoff open limps and you're on the button. So everybody folds to the cutoff who open limps. You're in a full ring game with 100 big blind effective stacks. If you have pocket 9s, Jack 10 suited, Ace King offsuit, or King Jack of hearts, which of these hands is going to play best as an overlimp and worse as an isolation raise? So if you're going to ISO all of these hands except for one, which one is it going to be? If you have to pick one of those hands to just go ahead and overlimp, just call, and the rest of them you're going to toss into an ISO raising range, and you've got to settle that up right now and decide right now what you're going to do from anytime you get into this situation. What's your choice? What do you think is going to be the best thing to do? Which hand do you want to have in your overlimping range? And then the other three, of course, will be in ISO raise ranges versus a cutoff open when you're on the button. 100 big blinds effective. 16. What situation might make us decide to polarize our 3-bet range instead of 3-betting a more linear or depolarized range? A, no situation warrants polarizing a range pre-flop. B, only when we're out of position and when we expect that our opponent will call very often and rarely 4-bet us should we polarize our 3-betting range. C, we have position on the open raiser and we expect him to fold a lot and to rarely call, so we think he's going to play mostly 4-bet or fold versus our 3-bet. Is that a good reason to polarize our range? Or D, it is always best to use a polarized range when 3-betting pre-flop in no limit hold'em. Is that the case? That was a cool one. I like that. These are just random. It's switching from one page to the next in a random method. So here we go. 17. If you get to a river spot where all your hands beat your opponent's bluffs and lose to all of his value hands, so you're in a polar versus bluff catcher spot, what percent of your range should you call with when facing a pot-sized river jam in order to keep villain breaking even on his bluffs, or again, indifferent between bluffing and giving up with his bluffs? Should we be calling 33%, which is A, B, 66%, which would be 2/3 of whatever range of hands you made it to this spot with, C, half of your range, or D, if you beat all villains' bluffs and you're getting this price, you should call with all of your bluff catchers. So which one of those is accurate? 18. Which of the following should not incentivize you to check back a monster hand on the flop? So, like, what's not part of a good rationale for slow playing a monster on the flop? By checking it back. So which of these is not a consideration that may make you consider or want to think about slow playing a monster? A. Shallow stacks that don't require 3 streets of betting to get stacks in by the river. B. A static and dry flop. C. A desire to uncap your check back range in a spot where you'll want to have some showdown value hands that check back as pre-flop raiser. D. It's just generally best to check back the top and bottom of your range for balance, so we're just usually going to want to check back our monsters, if that's the case. Or E, if we have a suspicion that our opponent is going to make more aggressive mistakes against a check back than he's going to make calling mistakes against a continuation bet. So if E is the case, is that a good reason to check back a monster hand on the flop? 19. Your opponent is continuation betting a polarized range but checking back the middle of his range on the flop as pre-flop raiser. So he's c-betting a polarized range and he's checking back his bluff catchers and showdown value type hands. Which of the following is not a good way to adjust your strategy to beat a player that's using that kind of strategy? A. Make more check raises for very thin value. B. Overbet lead turns after pre-flop raiser checks the flop back. Or C. Fold less often to a c-bet, looking to check raise some turns and overbet some rivers on when turns go check. So again, your opponent is c-betting polar, checking back the middle stuff. He's checking back the middle stuff. He's polarizing his continuation bet range. Which of the following is not a good adjustment? So what do we not want to do? A. Make more check raises for very thin value. B. Overbet lead turns after pre-flop raiser checks the flop back. Or C. Fold less often versus a c-bet, looking to check raise some turns and overbet some rivers after the turn checks through. 20. What is not a good way to adjust to a player who check raises his strongest hands and strongest draws, but he leads with his weak and mid-strength made hands and his weaker draws? A. Get aggressive versus his leads, raise a polarized range and call some decent hands as well as some floats. B. Increase frequency and size of your c-bets with a linear range. Or C. Continuation bet a polarized range and check back a lot of your good but not great hands on the flop. 21. Which of the following statements is a true brute fact about no limit hold'em strategy? A. It simply is a good strategy to c-bet your draws in position as pre-flop raiser when checked to in a heads-up pot. Sounds reasonable. B. Slow playing should be your default option when you have a very strong hand, and it's unlikely to be outdrawn on future streets. So you've got a strong hand, and it's a hand that doesn't require protection. So maybe it's just a good idea to typically slow play hands in situations like that. That seems like that might be reasonable too. C. I'm sure will also sound a little reasonable, but only one of them actually is, okay? C. Checking back some of your flush draws as pre-flop raiser is part of a balanced strategy, and allows you to represent a variety of hands on different runouts. Okay, one of those. 22. You are 67 big blinds effective, nearing the end of a 9-player sit and go. Villain opens 2 times the big blind from the button. You call from the small blind, and the big blind folds. The flop is Queen, Jack, 5, Club, Diamond, Club. Queen, Jack, 5, two-tone. There's 5 bigs in the flop. The min raise that the button opened with. The 2 bigs you put in total from the small blind, and the one big blind with the big blind folded. So there's some dead money in there. You check, your opponent bets 3 big blinds into a 5 big blind pot. You check raise to 10 big blinds, and villain calls. So the action is check, bet, raise, call. The turn is the king of diamonds. We have a 25 big blind pot. You bet 15 big blinds, and villain calls again on the turn. And the river comes out the 2 of spades. We've got a 55 big blind pot. You jam all in with your last 40 big blinds. What hand should probably not be in your range? Pocket fives, 10-9 suited in diamonds, ace of clubs, queen of diamonds, ace of clubs, 9 of clubs. Which one of these hands is probably not supposed to be, probably not going to be, probably ought not be in our range after we call pre-flop, check raise the flop, bet the turn, and jam the river? Pocket fives, 10-9 of diamonds, ace queen offsuit, or ace 9 of clubs. 23. Which of the following statements is true regarding polar versus bluff catcher scenarios that occur in no limit hold'em? A. The player with the polarized range will rarely bet the turn himself regardless of positions. And so that's saying if the player has a polarized range and is checked to when he's in position, or he has a polarized range and he is out of position on the turn, the player with that polarized range will rarely bet the turn himself, regardless of which of those 2 situations he's in. Or B, the player with the bluff catcher heavy range, or the all bluff catcher range, is rarely going to lead into the polarized players, or the polarized range, and rarely bet when checked to. So those are kind of opposites, right? Like A is the player with the polarized range will rarely bet the turn himself, regardless of positions, and B is the player with the bluff catcher range will rarely lead into the polarized range and will rarely bet the bluff catcher range into the polarized range if he's checked to on any street. C, the bluff catcher's range has an inherent advantage in EV that's built into it, that arises as just a feature of games that have wagers within complete information. So one of the 2 players, if one of them has a built-in advantage, we're saying it's the guy with the bluff catcher heavy range, and that's just a feature of game theory as it applies to no limit hold'em. So there's your A, your B, and your C. Choose wisely. 24. When 5 players limp into a pot in a full ring cash game with 100 big blinds each, the button can profitably call with ATC because he's getting 6.5 to 1 pot odds, as long as we can feel pretty confident that the blinds are unlikely to raise. Okay, so let me just read the question the way that I wrote it. When 5 players limp into a pot in a full ring cash game with 100 big blind stacks for everybody, the button can profitably call with any 2 cards, given his 6.5 to 1 pot odds, as long as the players in the blinds are unlikely to raise. Is that true, or is that false? 25. A range cannot be both polarized and balanced by definition. True or false? 26. A GTO strategy will incorporate loss leaders, which are slightly negative EV plays that are meant to benefit the EV of the overall strategy at all reasonably high stack depths. So the question is basically, is it true that beyond a certain number of big blinds, a game theory optimal strategy will incorporate loss leader plays that will be slightly negative EV plays, but that will increase the overall value of the strategy? True or false? 27. If you know for sure that a player is bluffing rivers at a frequency that is 15% higher than equilibrium on the river, then that means you should call with approximately 15% more of your bluff catchers. Or we'll even say approximately or exactly 15% more if the range happens to break down that way. So if you know for sure that a player is bluffing rivers 15% more often than he ought to at equilibrium, then you should call with about 15% more bluff catchers, true or false. We're running out of questions here. I'm so excited. 28. That's my excited voice. Which of the following is not a true statement? A. If you could play a perfect Nash equilibrium in a heads-up game, your profit would come from the degree to which your opponent failed to mirror your perfect strategy. B. Flat calling pocket aces pre-flop is a way to uncap your calling range. C. Larger bets allow you to work more bluffs into a polarized range. Or D. The advantage to having the initiative going to the flop is roughly equal to or about on par with a positional advantage. So D is saying that basically being in position or being out of position with the pre-flop initiative, it kind of cancels out. So that if one player has the initiative going to the flop and the other has position, that those two edges kind of cancel each other. Is that true? Because one of these is not true. One of these is pretty definitely not true. C, larger bets allow you to work more bluffs into a polarized range. So is it the case that if you're constructing a polarized range, you're balancing it, you're working out what hands should be in it, which hands you should bluff with, which hands you should value bet. If you use larger bets, does that allow you to use more bluffs? Or do those two things go hand in hand? Should we be using large wagers when we have a lot of hands we want to bluff with in a polarized range? Or I guess you could look at it like if we want to take a line where we're betting some very strong value hands, does it make sense to use large bets? And if so, does it also make sense to work more bluffs in? Or basically, like, if you're using larger bets, does that allow you to work more bluffs into a polarized range? I guess that's the best way to put it, which is exactly what it says, pretty much. B, flat calling aces pre-flop uncaps your pre-flop flat calling range. Is that debatable? Is that false? Or is that just a very true and maybe obvious statement? A, if you could play a perfect Nash equilibrium, so if you could play a perfect strategy in a heads-up game, would your profit be exactly correlated? Would it be correlated exactly with the degree to which your opponent fails to mimic your strategy? Is that an absolutely true story? 29, I think there's a 29. Oh, the bonus section, that's right. We've got two big fat bonus questions. Question number 29. True or false? Phil Hellmuth Jr. is good at no limit hold'em. What do you think? True or false? True or false? And the last question, I think, is question 30. Which of the following is not a true statement? A, Navonod on No Limit Hold'em is among the best ways to improve your No Limit Hold'em game online for free. B, Navonod charging only $20 an hour for coaching is absurd value, especially when the first session is free. What? C, Jonathan Little's books on No Limit Hold'em poker are a much better investment than very inexpensive coaching from yours truly. One of those is not a true statement. Can you tell me which it is? In conclusion, I think the best way to approach this quiz would be to go through and take the quiz off the top of your head. Answer whatever you know. Use your intuition and poker skill, your deductive reasoning to work out the rest of the answers. Maybe you can get a hint from some of the other questions. Maybe you can get a hint from the way that I structured the answers. Maybe you can get a hint from my voice when I read off the question. And that's what poker skills are all about. There is no shame in using that kind of stuff. That's not even cheating. I was going to say there's no shame in cheating, but that's like playing poker. Use your deductive reasoning. Try to get a read off of me, and see if you can pick up on patterns within the test. Maybe that was the test. Maybe. You never know. There is no spoon. Keep track of the questions that you're not sure about. Write them down. But I do think if you do that, you should get a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, whatever your favorite writing utensil is. Write down all of your answers, and put like maybe a little star next to the ones you're not real sure on. And go back and look and see if there's some kind of specific type of question that you're not clear on. If there's something that is standing out as possibly a weak or weakness, or just the spot where your poker knowledge sidewalk ends, and then do some research on that specific stuff. After you've researched it, go back and take the quiz again. Then when I release the answer video and kind of show you how to score it, you can grade both of those quizzes side by side, the one you did before the research and the one you did after, and see what kind of improvement you might be able to measure. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Until next time, guys, I think next time will just be the answers, but don't hold me to that. I want to give you at least a couple days. I want to make sure that everybody's had a chance to kind of look at these and go through them once, maybe twice, do some research, go through them again, and just kind of get it out there a little bit before I release the answers. You can trust me, I'll release them. You're going to get the answers. You did the first time. And if you enjoy this video and you haven't seen the first quiz, you can go back and watch the first quiz. The answers are already available. And definitely, if you like this video, like and subscribe, and please make comments. I love to talk